Hi everybody, my name is Susan, my pronouns are she, her, hers, and you are watching Mad Knitting. This is episode 53 and it's the very beginning of 2024. It is January 3rd and Happy New Year. I hope everybody has had a restful holiday. I thought that I might be recording another short episode before the holidays to do kind of a wrap up on my holiday knitting. That didn't happen. I didn't get enough done and I didn't have enough time, but here I am. Since it's the beginning of the new year, I thought I might start out by introducing myself again. It's possible I've got a few new viewers here and it just seems like a good opportunity. It's a new year, time for fresh starts, however you think of that. So I'll take a little bit of time to do that now. So first of all, as I said, my name is Susan and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I live in Madison, Wisconsin with my family. I have two teenage children. I have my oldest, my son is almost 18. He will be graduating from high school this year, leaving the nest. Yes, I have a lot of feelings about that, but these are all good and exciting things because they're supposed to grow up and go out on their own. My younger child, my daughter, is in 10th grade. She just turned 16. She did get her license. So yeah, time flies. My husband and I moved to Madison long ago. We were just out of college. We came here for graduate school. Never intended to stay in Madison, but around here it happens a lot that people move here for school, think that they will eventually move away, and then they just kind of stay. That's what happened to us. I work from home. I've had different career and professional tracks in my life. When I moved to Madison long ago, it was to study music. I actually have several advanced degrees in piano performance, collaboration, and teaching. My kids were born at the tail end of that time, that first run through grad school. So for about 10 years after I finished that degree, well, I did several degrees, but for about 10 years from when I finished until I had a change, I was balancing parenting young children with trying to do a lot of independent teaching and freelance gigs, and I had a part-time adjunct position for a while at a local college, and it just it worked okay for a little while, but I realized excuse me, that I was hitting burnout, or I was headed for burnout and needed a change. So 5.5 years ago, I entered a new graduate program for urban and regional planning and got my master's degree. How do I feel about urban planning? I don't know. I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. It's interesting. It's much different than I expected. It has nothing to do with music. It really isn't like music at all. But it's what I'm doing now. Mostly. I work for a nonprofit. I work from home, so I have flexibility in my schedule. And one of the reasons that I started this channel a little over 2 years ago, it was right after I changed jobs. So back up a little bit. I graduated in May of 2020 with that urban planning degree. So at that time, you might remember, it felt like the whole world had turned upside down. It was really scary. It was hard to find a job. I actually got lucky that there was an opening at a different nonprofit. That was not the job I'm working now. So I was there for about 16 months before something that was a better fit for me opened up in a different organization. And I started the job I'm in now in October 2021. So I went from working full-time in an office with other people, kind of. I mean, early in those days of the pandemic, we were masking and staying away from each other, and it was all a little weird. But I went from actually having contact with people on a regular basis to working from home. And most days I don't see anybody else other than my family, at least in the work context. So it can get a little bit lonely. It can get a little bit isolating. And I started this channel the time that I started my new job because I thought that I would need to create for myself another way to connect with, with the outside world and with people outside of my own, very sort of limited bubble. So I've enjoyed it and I'm going to keep going with it. I don't have any big changes to announce. I'm just going to kind of keep going the way I usually do. But that's kind of how it started. So I do want to tell you a bit about sort of how I approach this and how I approach knitting in general. First of all, I've been knitting a long time. I learned to knit as a child. I was, I think, in about 4th grade, and my mom signed me up for a 4-H class. So it was a free class. I went through about 3 years of that knitting class before I just was knitting on my own. Anyway, that was a long time before the internet. There were not very many resources for learning knitting. It was a completely different landscape than it is now. But I've been knitting ever since. My enthusiasm has sort of gone up and down throughout my life, but in the last 15 years or so, I would say that it's been my main hobby. It is a huge part of my life and very important to me. And as such, I personally feel like knitting is not something that I can separate from everything else in life, from everything else that's going on in the world. I know there are different opinions about how crafters should talk about like current events and politics and social issues. There are some people that say firmly knitting/crafting is my escape. It is what I use to manage my anxiety or shut the rest of the world out for a time because all of those things are stressful. So don't bring your politics into my knitting. That is what I see a lot. That is not how I approach things. I just want to be very clear that for me, I think there are because knitting is such a huge part of like every part of my life, it's impossible for me to totally separate it from those other things. Yes, knitting is a way for me to help manage stress, maybe calm some anxiety, keep my hands busy. Remember, I'm trained as a pianist for my entire adult life until about 5 years ago. I was playing the piano all the time. And when I went back to school and I was sitting in class and, I knit probably a dozen pairs of socks, plus a lot of other things just when I was in grad school because I had to keep my hands busy. So where was I going with that? Anyway, all that to say, knitting is like this huge part of my life. I cannot separate it from other things that are going on. So that's how I feel about it. On this channel, I do mention social and political issues if it is relevant to what I'm making or if there is something going on that is too big to ignore. I do try to be careful not to go on and on about things, especially when I don't have anything particularly insightful or new to add. An example would be the current conflict in Palestine. I think it's horrific what is happening there. I have definitely spent time on the phone leaving messages for my elected representatives in Washington, urging them to support a ceasefire because indiscriminate killing of children and civilians is wrong. But I don't have any special knowledge or insight to offer on that part of the world or the history there. So I don't have a lot to say about it, except that it troubles me greatly. And I wish that my tax dollars were not going to fund the weapons that are doing that. Anyway, so that is just part of me and part of who I am. So I know some people are very turned off by those subjects generally, but there are some of us who just can't ignore them and totally shut them out. There are a lot of other ways that, for me, knitting is like intertwined with all these other aspects of our daily lives. I think that if knitting and crafting in general, I'm gonna keep saying knitting because that's my main hobby, although I do other things. Knitting is, if it was not at all relevant to everything else going on in the world, I don't think it would have such a big presence online. But the crafting community online is huge. There's a lot of money tied up in it. And there are a lot of people who use their knitting and their crafting to make statements, to raise money for causes, to try to get across a particular point of view. So you can't really separate it from those things. And I even wrote, I took some notes so that I could try to be somewhat organized about what I'm saying. Knitting intersects with the rest of the world in so many ways. For example, if you are a knitter, you are a consumer of knitting products. You are buying yarn, you're buying tools, you're buying patterns, or maybe you're not now. Maybe you have enough to keep you going for a while, but at some point you bought those things. And there are times when we have to consider carefully just who we are supporting when we buy this stuff. So whether it's important to you to support small businesses or local farms, or makers at craft fairs versus putting your money into larger commercial companies or big box stores. Maybe you don't think a lot about that, but that is one way that knitting intersects with our sort of social views or our social values. And me saying that is not a judgment on where you have spent your money. I have bought yarn at Knit Picks. I have bought yarn at local fiber festivals. I have ordered from small businesses online. So in many ways, I feel like there's a place for all of that. But then there are definitely some businesses that I refuse to support. People who are openly bigoted, like Hobby Lobby is on my definite no list. I will never set foot in there because they're horrible. Just saying. And just sort of in our consumption practices in general, that is a statement that's a way that we express our values, whether they are very strongly held or just sort of under the surface. That is a thing that shows up. Now, who I am as a knitter, as far as what I make, I knit a lot. I knit all the time. I knit a lot of things for myself. I have enough sweaters and hats to last me a long time. I could quit knitting for myself and I would eventually wear through my socks and mittens, but I could be well set up for a while. I also knit for other people a lot of the times because I work from home and I spend a lot of my time in Zoom meetings. In order to keep my hands busy and to keep myself focused, I knit all day long. Some days it depends. It depends on what I've actually got going, but I do knit during work hours if the occasion calls for it. So I knit a lot for other people. I knit for people in my family if it's something that they want and will wear. I knit a lot for my nieces. I have 2 little nieces in Virginia that I don't get to see as often as I would like, so I knit for them all the time. I've knit for charity before, although it's been a while since I've done that. I knit for friends just when I feel like it, or if I think of something that somebody would really like. Usually it's something like a pair of socks or a hat. So that's just how I approach it. With that intro out of the way, let's get to the regular content of the episode. I will tell you what I'm wearing. I will share the one finished object that I got done since my last episode. I want to talk about sort of what I have in mind for 2024, or at least the first part of the year, including a whole stack of works in progress. Sometimes I also share, if I have time and if in the mood, I will talk about maybe something that I'm reading. I don't think I'm going to do that today because I have a feeling this is going to run long, and I've been a little slow about reading lately. I have to admit, I'm not getting through very much. In fact, I have a book that's overdue at the library that I need to finish and turn in. So anyway, I am wearing a Buffalo Rose tee. The interesting part is here on the trunk. I made this. Oh man, I can't remember if I made it last year or the year before. Same design on the back as the front. This is a sweater by Carol Chan, also KC Knitting Co. I will include links to everything in the description box below this video. She has since come out with a few other designs with this motif of the roses overlaying the buffalo plaid. There's a yoke sweater. I think there's a cardigan, maybe a child's version. I know there's a hat, possibly a cowl. I'm not sure. You can check her Ravelry page or her website for all those things. Knitting the color work was the reason I wanted to make this sweater, and it was also the biggest challenge because, as you can see, you're using 3 colors at a time for a good portion of it. The chart was pretty complex, and also there were a lot of wide floats, so you can see that I used ladder back jacquard to deal with those long floats. It was a fun sweater to make. I had to do a couple of modifications for fit. First of all, I made the sleeves long because the original pattern has short sleeves, and I used worsted weight wool and thought that long sleeves would be more practical. Also, the pattern did not call for any neck shaping. It just had everything go up here, and then you do ribbing and you're done. It took me a couple of tries, but I really wanted to make sure that the front was lower than the back. If you've been watching me for a while, you know it's a huge pet peeve of mine when designers do not include good neck shaping in sweater patterns. For a raglan, I don't think it works to use short rows. I ended up doing it 2 or 3 different times. I think I cast off stitches in the front and kind of went back and forth to finish the raglan shaping. It all worked out. I like the fit. This just fits me like a nice sort of crew neck top, you know, nothing too elaborate, but it fits me well. It's warm, it's comfy, and I really like the red roses on it. I have finished one thing since my last episode. A pair of socks for my daughter. So I had showed you the start of these. These were a last minute, I'm going to make socks for her for Christmas. I think I finished them in about 3 days. So here they are. Here's the pair. So I think I had just begun the cuff when I showed these last time. I used Knit Picks Stroll Tweed. I like this yarn a lot. I will be curious to see how well it holds up in a pair of socks. I've made socks out of Stroll Tweed before, but not for myself. They've always been for gifts. This is the 3rd pair I think I've made for gifts, so it'll be interesting to see how it holds up. I knew I needed something pretty plain that I could get through quickly, but I wanted it to be a little more interesting than just a blah gray sock. So I added a little bit of white to the top, and then I added some at the toe as well. Now, originally I had thought I might do something more elaborate for the color work. I thought, oh, maybe I'll spell her name or find a snowflake pattern or something. When it came down to it, I ended up deciding that a less elaborate design, A, would be easier to work into my stitch count, and B, would probably be more appealing for my daughter, who tends to like things sort of pretty simple and classic. So I didn't use a color work pattern. I just kind of improvised, and you can basically see how it works. I just did like 1 white, 3 gray for a couple of rounds. Then I was doing every other one for a few rounds, and then back to 3 gray, 1 white. So it just kind of made this cool, like, I don't know, kind of a zipper type pattern or fence post. I don't know exactly how you describe it. I don't really like knitting color work on socks generally because the fabric isn't as stretchy, but I thought for just a little bit by the toe, it would be interesting and it wouldn't cause fit issues. I did go up a needle size just for the color work. So to share some details about how I made these, like I said, it's Knit Pick Stroll Tweed. I used size 1 needles for just about everything. I went up to a size 1.5 for the color work bit. For my daughter, her feet are a little bigger than mine, so I cast on 68 stitches. I did 1 by 1 ribbing at the cuff. Doesn't want to show up because the light here is bad. It is so gray and gloomy. January is a hard month, you guys. The days are finally getting longer, but it's really gloomy outside. We have just a little bit of snow on the ground, but not enough to like have fun with. It's been really cloudy. You know, we've got the post-holiday blues. It's just bleh. Anyway. So I did plain stockinette down the leg. I have partridge heel with a gusset and of course this color work detail on the toe. She likes them. I don't think she's worn them yet because it has not actually been that cold to have wool socks weather. But I meant I could grab them and talk about them today. So I wish I had another finished object to show you, but I don't. I actually have quite a lot of works in progress. A lot of them are old. I think all of them you have seen in one stage or another here if you've been watching. These are all things that I have shown at some point or another on this channel. And when it comes to the new year and plans for the new year, I'm trying to be easy on myself. I am not making any hard and firm resolutions. I always have the vague goal of knitting from stash and not buying new stuff. I really need to do that this year because I have so much yarn. Oh my gosh. But if I like make a hard and fast rule and do it in this really sort of punishing mindset, I don't think it's going to work. Anyway, I do think that I would feel better about things generally if I work through my works in progress, at least finish things faster than I'm starting new ones. Rather than make a rule that I have to finish everything, I'm going to at least try to get a better balance. So that's my plan. So let me show you what I have in progress. I'll kind of work backwards, and I might even talk through a few plans too for the rest of the year, or for the time being. I cannot make a whole year's worth of plans because I absolutely will change my mind. Just saying. You know how some people do that Make 9 challenge and they will, I wonder how many people actually stick to that, like commit to 9 things at the beginning of the year and actually make those and don't ever deviate. I don't imagine it's that many people. Okay, so I started this sweater for my mom. This is the Solina sweater. It's by Mayu KP. It is from, let me show you the book, which I've talked about a lot. I apologize if this is like really repetitive for some of you, but it's from this book, Contrasts. I would love to make just about everything in here because it's so fabulous. So here's Solina. Here's the sweater I'm making for my mom. It's her Christmas present. We chose it together. We chose the pattern together and the yarn. My goal was to have the main body of the sweater finished by the time we got to my parents' place in Kentucky during the holidays. I did manage to get that done. She tried it on. It hasn't been blocked yet, but when she tried it on, it fit beautifully. The length was perfect. The short rows and other adjustments I did were great. So I got going on the sleeves, and I'm almost done with the sleeves. I would have finished this last night if I had just stayed up like an hour too late, but I didn't want to do that. So here it is. I think this yoke stitch pattern is really beautiful, and it's gonna be even more beautiful once I've blocked it and kind of laid it out so that it can even out. There is a pattern on the bottom of the sleeve that sort of echoes that, with baubles and everything. My mom likes baubles, so I left them in there. So for the sleeve, the one thing you have to keep in mind is that as you are making your way down the pattern, at some point you start this ribbing as you're finishing this lace pattern. So you have to make sure that when you start the chart for the sleeve, you know that when you get to the end of it, you're going to be close to the cuff. So I made sure I was doing plain stockinette up until I think it was about 5.5 inches before the end, before I started the chart for the sleeve. So my plan is to finish this, send it back to her. I'm going to block it, hide all the ends except for the ends of the sleeves, just in case I got the sleeve length wrong. I've done that before. She can hide the ends. My mom is a knitter. She is totally capable of doing that. So I will get all the rest of it done and send it to her, and hopefully she can wear it this winter yet. You know, it doesn't get that cold in Kentucky. Oh, the yarn I'm using, by the way, is it's a fairly new one from Knit Picks. It's called Woolen Cotton. It's DK weight, 50-50 cotton wool blend. So you can really feel the cotton when you're knitting this yarn. It didn't make my hands too terribly tired, but if you're really sensitive to repetitive stress or working with inelastic yarns, that's something to watch out for if you use this yarn. It feels nice. I think because of the wool in it, it shouldn't stretch out too badly or anything. It's not machine washable, which for my mom is fine. It's not a big deal. And I think it has really good stitch definition. You can see everything pretty well there. The color I used is Sean Heather. It's this really nice light tan color. Most of the colors they have are very dark. Like there's a dark navy and a dark green, and I forget what else. So there were only a couple of options that my mom was even willing to consider because she wanted something light enough that this would show up. But she's really happy with it. So I am really looking forward to having it done. Oh, I have a label. I think I ordered 8 skeins of it, and it was definitely more than I need. I'm gonna have at least 1 whole skein left over, plus the partials from knitting it. I definitely could have gotten away with ordering 7 skeins. I'm not sure if 6 would have been enough. I could weigh it all when I'm done and see. So I have to decide what to do with the rest of it. I briefly considered ordering some in a different color and making myself a striped sweater, using what's left of this and maybe doing like a navy. But at this time, I really don't want to be buying yarn. I would really like to focus on working through more of what I have, trying to free up some of that storage space, and not just using this as an excuse to buy more. So it's actually a nice color for toys. I could see this making a really nice like bunny or rabbit or something like that. So I'll keep that in mind. I don't know. A wool cotton blend is sort of tricky to use for something like hats. You wouldn't want to make mittens out of it because it wouldn't be very warm. So anyway, that's the deal with that. The other Christmas present that I cast on that did not get finished, did not even come close. Like there was not a prayer of me finishing this, was, I'll show you the pattern. Here We Know 'Em Again. It's by Sarah Shira. I had started one of these thinking I would give it as a birthday present in November. That didn't happen, in part because I used needles that were too small and the hat was super stiff and I didn't like it. So then I started over and thought, oh, I'll make a pair of these to give my brother and his wife for Christmas, which was a good idea, but totally unrealistic. So this is as far as I got. You know, it's so dark in here. I'm gonna just try to get a little more light in. It's maybe a little better. So this is as far as I got. The cable pattern uses twisted knit stitches, which is not my favorite thing to do. It looks really good, so it's worth the effort, but it's also kind of slow. I have this leftover wool yarn. This is either Patons or El Array, I'm not sure. When I talked about this before, I'm sure I showed you the yarn. The labels are long gone, but I thought I would make one gnome out of this really nice heathery kind of cranberry color, another one out of this heathery orange, and I could do the whole gnome that color, or I've got dark brown I could use for the bottom. I haven't totally decided. I'm losing steam on this project a little bit, but I think I would still like to do it. I think it would be fun. They would be really cute, and I'm not sure what else I would use this yarn for. So I'll plug away at it. And it'll be fun. It'll be a fun thing to have finished. So those are the holiday works in progress that, alas, are not done. But the sweater's close. The gnomes will get there. And that's one thing. So the other works in progress I have just been languishing for a while. They're things that I started, put down for a long time. I want to finish them, but they keep slipping down the priority list. And I think for 2024, along with trying to knit from stash and not buy new things, I would like to try and finish these works in progress so that I can feel good about starting new things and not have things linger for so long. So I'll kind of work my way. Maybe I'll start actually with the oldest and work my way up. So I've got this sweater that, like, loyal longtime viewers from ages ago may recognize this. For my job, even though I work from home, I do have to travel because I work with communities around the state. And I had a project in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, which is in the middle, right smack in the middle of Wisconsin. I've had a couple different things going there. But in 2022, I had a project that spanned several months, and I had to go up there a few times. And I stopped at a yarn shop and bought local, I love this stuff, local Shetland wool and some local hand-spun, hand-dyed Cordale. Here's the yarn. Here's the hand-spun. There's loads of it left. In gorgeous autumn colors. Love it. And then here is this Shetland in a natural cream. And I bought it knowing that I wanted to make a colorwork yoke sweater. I started with the Epistrophe sweater by Kate Davies because I always loved that colorwork design on the yoke. It turned out that the fit was absolute shit. It was just awful. It was like too tight across the shoulders. There was no way to fix it. I think it's just a design flaw or a fit issue where my shoulders are just not the right shape or size or something for the rest of it. So I pulled out the yoke and found a tin can knits pattern to use instead. I think it's Dog Star. I didn't bring it up or anything. And I did that, and I finished the main body, and I think I've tried this on, and I know it fits. You can see my steek stitches in the middle. I put them on a holder because my plan is to do the drop stitch style. I think this is not super common, but one way you can do a steek is to, instead of binding off the stitches when you're done, put them on a holder, and then you can drop them all, so you end up with like this long you know, all the drop stitches in the middle, then you cut through the middle of those, tie them off. That's the one steeked project, that's how I did it, and it worked really well, and there's no way it'll ravel beyond what you've already dropped. So that's my plan. I've kind of chickened out on doing that yet, which is why it's still unsteeked. It looks like I was gonna fold over the collar. I might need to make this collar a little taller. I don't know, I have not picked this up in about a year. And the last time I did anything with it, I got the needles stuck in the sleeve to pick up stitches, but I didn't even take out the provisional cast on that I had done for the sleeves. So I don't want to go on and on about this sweater because I think I'll talk more about it when I actually work on it, but this is something that I really want to get done. The yarn is so warm. I think this is going to wear like a jacket, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do a cardigan, so I could put in a zipper and, you know, have that option, because if it was a pullover, I would probably overheat, which is saying a lot. I'm usually cold, but I could just tell this was going to be really warm. So that is one of my oldest works in progress. I really want to get it done. There's no reason not to have it. And it was causing me all kinds of trouble before, and I'm determined to have victory over it. A more recent sweater, this is one I started last year, and I've showed it recently. It's just, I worked on it great for like a month, set it down for a long time, picked it back up briefly, but then set it back down because I was doing holiday knits. But this is another color work yoke. It's going to be a steek cardigan. This is the Porty cardigan by Gridge & Johnston. Color theme wise, it's not all that different from the one I just showed you. So I think you can tell I have a tendency for certain colors, don't I? I'm using Barocco Lannis Light, which is supposed to be a sport weight yarn, but for me, it knits up really beautifully at 7 stitches per inch. So that's what I'm going with. Yeah, I'm through past all the hard stuff. I'm on the first sleeve, so I need to finish that, do the second sleeve, and figure out this steek. So for this one, I am going to do whatever steeking method she recommends. I haven't really read that far ahead. It's not going to be the drop stitch thing, of course. It's going to be probably reinforcing it somehow. I don't know. I haven't tried it yet. I haven't done it. But I want to get this done because it's beautiful. It's just the kind of thing I like to wear. And I've been wanting more cardigans in my life. I like the flexibility it gives you, where if your temperature is changing or if your environment is changing, it's a lot easier to put it on or take it off if you can just slip it on over your shoulders instead of having to pull a whole sweater over your head. So that is my second sweater in progress. Now the rest of what I have is a whole bunch of hats. Many, many hats. I kind of always have hats on the go. They're just portable. They make good gifts. You kind of can't have too many. So it's a good way to use leftover yarn. I just tend to have a lot of hats. And these are all ones that I've showed you before, so I won't spend a ton of time on them. There's one that I started last summer. I know that I grabbed the yarn at the last minute because I had a meeting and I wanted something to keep my hands busy. And this is using, I need to put some stoppers on here so I don't lose my stitches. This is using some leftover yarn from Iceland. We made a trip there in 2022. And I bought 4 skeins of yarn to make mittens for my kids. And I don't want any of it to go to waste because it's so special. I mean, this was like grown on the backs of sheep, owned by the woman who runs this shop. I mean, and she the gray and the black are natural colored, but she hand dyed these others. And yeah, I want to use every bit of it. So I am striping it up into a hat. I'm knitting this in the style of the Polka Polka hat, which I've made many of. That's a design from the book Moon and Turtle by Kiyomi and Sachiko Bergen. They are Canadian-Japanese designers. So I'm adjusting this for a different gauge. That hat is made in fingering weight. This is more of a DK weight yarn. Also, the Icelandic wool is very rough. So I wanted to do a lined hat because it would be extra warm and because then the scratchy wool, you know, you'd have a layer of protection. So I've got, this is pretty tall. I think I must be about ready for decreases. I need to measure and be sure. And I'm going to use some other leftover yarn. This is Classic Elite Fresco. This has been off the market for years and years, but it's a merino, Angora. There might be some alpaca in here too, I'm not sure. But I've got just a little bit of gray. So I'll start the brim with the gray, and when I run out of that, I will use the black for the rest. And I just think it's gonna be a really nice complement to the outside. So this is pretty easy, straightforward. Knitting is just a matter of me doing it. Making sure I know what stage I'm at in terms of measuring, and just, you know, getting a move on with it. In a similar vein, I am making another Polka Polka hat, this time in the gauge called for. This is some Knit Circus yarn left over from something else. I don't even remember what I used this for, but you can tell it's a gradient. I think in its original state, it got to a much darker gray. That must be what I used up. So I don't think I will run out of this, but I'll use quite a bit of it. So this is the outside layer. Just grays. Gray, 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 just like the sky today. And in order to give it just a little more cheer, I've picked up some, I'm using leftover Knit Picks Aloft. This is a lace weight mohair silk blend. I have just a little bit of this color Mirth. This is left over from a sweater I made. This is all I have left. So I will use this again for the brim, the part that you see folded up. And when I run out of this, I will finish it out with, this is also a loft. This might be the color Silver, I'm not entirely sure, but it's a really pale gray. And I just really like how these colors play together. I really like the look of a very plain neutral with something really, really bright and striking. I love gray and bright red. This shade of magenta is really growing on me. People keep telling me this is a good color for me, so I think I need to embrace it. Bright orange is fun. Even if it's not a great color for me, it's still fun. So that's that. So I have two sort of versions of Polka Polka hats. The last set of works in progress are just ribbed hats that I think I'm gonna give away to charity or something. I have all this yarn left over from sweaters that I've made for my nieces, and I just wanna use it up and have it out of my life. So I'm using the basic beanie pattern. This is from Tin Can Knits. I don't really need a pattern for something like this, but it's nice sometimes when somebody else does the math for you. So Tin Can Knits, if you're not familiar with them, they're a design duo that have been doing this for years and years. Their patterns are excellent, very well written, and one of the best things about them is that almost every single pattern they come out with is sized for any human. So from the smallest newborn up through, you know, what I think all their sweaters now go up to about a 70-inch circumference. Their older patterns may not be quite so size inclusive, but their newer ones definitely are. And as for the hats, they give you 6 sizes, or maybe 7 hat circumferences. This particular pattern is written for worsted, DK, sport, or sock weight yarn. So you've got so many different, they even give you yardage if you're going to have a contrast color for the brim. So when you look at like the cast on numbers and things, you've got so many options, you kind of can't go wrong. So I actually bought the entire basic collection. They have the hat, socks. I don't know if we'll ever use the sock pattern, but they have a pullover and a cardigan pattern in all these different sizes and all these different gauges. So it's definitely a good value. So I have started a variety of these using yarn left over from stuff, like I said, that I made for my nieces. I guess I've only got 2 on the needle so far, but there will be more. So using some leftover Rowan Soft Yak DK, which I used to make a sweater for my little niece last year. I used up what I had of this gray, and I'm finishing this up with pink. And I've got lots of this left, plus this whole other skein, so I can probably get another hat once I'm done with this one. And the second hat I have on the needles is using leftover Barocco Ultra Wool DK. It's very nice. It's a super wash, 100% wool. It doesn't feel squeaky and plasticky like a lot of superwash wool does. I made sweaters and hats for my nieces out of this stuff. And it's nice, and I've got quite a bit left over, but I just kind of want to use it up and be done. So I have this light aqua color. I have a little bit of pale pink, which will be a good contrast with something. I have a tiny bit of this deep teal. And then I have a fair amount, like almost a whole skein left of bright red. And this I think is called violet. It's called Forget Me Not. I knew it was a flower name. So, you know, some of these colors go together better than others, but I'm using size 5 needles for this, size 6 needles for the Rowan. I may not do all of them the same, but I really want to use this up, make plain hats, probably give them away since these are all washable yarns. And then like win-win, somebody else will have warm heads, I'll have this yarn out of my stash, and I'll be keeping my hands busy. So, like I said, I won't necessarily get all of these works in progress done before I start something new, but I at least want to get 1 or 2 things finished before I move on to the next, because having too many things is just it's just a lot, you know, it's a little overwhelming. For me, it can be a little stressful. However, one thing that I will be casting on soon is a pair of mittens for my son. I just realized I left the pattern somewhere else, so I'm gonna go grab it and be right back. I'm back. Took a minute. Okay, so my son could really use a pair of mittens, and he knows that I want to make him a pair, and I knew that it would probably be best if we worked together to pick out a pattern rather than me surprising him, because he has, as many people do, you know, preferences, things that he likes or doesn't like. So on a previous episode, I had showed you this yarn, and I mentioned it was from Knit Circus and Utopia. This is what I'm going to use. What I think I forgot to say in that other episode is that I bought this in October during the Madtown Shop Hop. That's just an event where a bunch of local yarn shops in the area have, you know, open their doors on this particular weekend, and I think you can probably get a punch card. You know how shop hops work. I went to Knit Circus because they closed down their brick and mortar store a while ago, so it seemed pretty special that they were actually going to open up for this one day where you could actually see their yarns in person. And I kind of knew it was a mistake because I knew I would buy a bunch of stuff I didn't need, and I was right. But I also got this lovely yarn to make my son some mittens, so I don't really regret it that much. So this is yarn milled by Utopia Fiber Mill, which is in Southwest Wisconsin, and then hand dyed by the Crude Knit Circus. So it's pretty special and also features two of my very favorite Wisconsin-based fiber businesses. It's a rambly alpaca blend. I believe it's 80% wool, 20% alpaca. So I've got this beautiful deep blue color, which isn't quite as dark as it's showing. That's better because the light here is so bad. And then this, I've lost the label already, so I don't know what this is called, but it's got speckles in it that pick up that blue and also some tan. So I thought it would look beautiful together in a colorwork pattern. It's a DK weight, I think. So last night I told my son that I want to make him some mittens, and I said, should we pick out a pattern together, or would you like me to surprise you? And of course, he wanted to have some input. So we looked at some stuff on Ravelry, and happily, the one he liked the best is a pattern I already have. It is from this book called The Red Collection by Mandy Powers. This was published, 2012? 2010. This has been around for more than 10 years. I don't even know that Mandy Powers has been designing. I think she quit designing a long time ago. I think her first love was photography, and shortly after this, she went back and studied photography, and I think maybe that's what she does now. I'm not sure. Every pattern in here is so cool, so beautiful. She started with the intention of making everything red, black, and gray. So everything in here is like in that color scheme, which is right up my alley. And I've actually made these mittens before, a long time ago for somebody else. But the pattern he likes is called Radio Frequency. It's just cool, geometric, zigzaggy. I feel like it's appealing across genders. You know, it's not particularly, doesn't have particular markers as masculine or feminine. But the cool thing about it, you can see in this picture, I will cover the pattern, is that you flip the colors. You're going to use the same chart, but you're flipping the colors for the back of the hand and the palm. So the mittens are reversible. You can wear them either way, but depending on how you wear them, it will either be dark background with white contrast, or light contrast, light background with dark contrast. So that's what I'm going to make for him using this yarn. It's going to be knit at a really dense gauge, which is good because it can get cold here. He's going to college next year, even further north, so he will definitely need dense, warm mittens. And I'm excited to get started on these. So that'll happen soon. His birthday is in a month. He's turning 18 in a month. So I would like to have those done by his birthday. And when I really focus on it, mittens get done pretty fast. So that is an upcoming project. Okay. I'm a big doofus and completely forgot about this one finished object. I knit another pair of socks over the Christmas holiday. And rather than try to insert this earlier in the video, I'll just talk about it now. It's a rambly episode. I hope that's okay with you all. So while we were on this long holiday road trip, we drove to North Carolina, and then we drove to Kentucky, and then back here. So it was to see all the family, not leave anybody out. Meant, I don't know, between 30 and 40 hours in the car. And I drove a little bit, but not a whole lot. So I had a lot of time in the back seat to knit. That's how I made so much progress on my mom's sweater. But when I needed a break from that, I decided to make a pair of socks for myself. I was ready for something a little bit self-indulgent. These knit up super quick. It's Knit Circus yarn. Again, one of my favorites. This is the Daring base. It's DK weight. It's a merino cashmere nylon blend. I don't know that these are going to hold up for a super long time, but that's okay. They're thicker, they're soft and warm. They're basically house socks. I probably won't be wearing these outside much. It'll be mostly to keep my feet warm in the house. So because they're thicker, I used size 2 needles. I cast on 52 stitches. Probably could have gotten away with 48, but that's all right. Other than like needle size and stitch count, they're just basically made the way I make all of my socks. Got 1x1 ribbing, plain leg, I have partridge heel, etc., etc. I love the greens in this. Sorry, I don't have the label. I don't know what it's called. It might even be a Christmas themed color. I'm not totally sure. But next to reds, I love greens. And these are all the good greens. They're kind of everything from a dark sprucey green to a brighter leaf green. And I'm just really happy with them. There are a number of make-alongs happening. There are always a lot of make-alongs and knit-alongs happening. Most of them I don't participate in because I'm not a joiner really, but there are a few that are casual enough and just sort of laid back enough that I might participate. We'll see. And they all kind of overlap in the first part of the year. So one of them is hosted by the Yarniacs group. The Yarniacs is an audio podcast that's been going for, I don't know, more than 10 years, I think, co-hosted by 2 wonderful, wonderful women named Gail and Charlene. They live in California. The make-along that they have always at the beginning of the year is called the self-indulgent knit-along. It runs from the December solstice through the March equinox. And basically the idea is make something that feels self-indulgent to you. They call it a knit-along. It also includes crochet or weaving or spinning. So self-indulgent can mean a yarn that you really have wanted to use for a while. It can mean that you're knitting something for yourself. It can mean a pattern that you've always wanted to make, whatever. So these socks are definitely self-indulgent because they were for me. They were using like luxury yarn, and I knit them during the holidays when everything else was kind of busy and chaotic and all about everybody else. That's how it is. So I actually have a whole project done for the self-indulgent knit-along already. I might make something else. We'll see how much I get done on these other projects. A couple other that I wanted to mention, if I remember, I will like actually enter them somehow. And I don't remember hashtags for these, so I'll make sure they're on the screen and in the description box. There's another one that's been going for several years called the Imagine Knitting Cow. Again, doesn't have to be knitting, but it's hosted by the Imagine Landscapes podcast, another audio podcast. This one's hosted by 2 sisters that live in Canada. One of them is Sarah Shira, the gnome designer extraordinaire, and then her sister Katie. So the Imagine Knitting Cow is, the dates line up pretty similar to the self-indulgent one, and it's pretty similar concept. Basically, something that you have wanted, you have imagined knitting for a long time, whatever it is, and for whatever reason, you make it, you enter it. I don't even know if they have prizes, but it's a way for people to just share the joy of making something that they've always wanted to make. The last one I wanted to mention, it's a new one, and I thought it was a really cool idea. This one's hosted by Stephanie of the YouTube channel Edible Thoughts Makes. She has just started one called the Make It Again Mal, like Make It Again Make Along. This one I think is mostly going to be through hashtags on Instagram. I will link the video that she made about it in the description box. It's about an 8-minute just introduction to the whole idea. But the concept is just January through March of this year, make something that you've already made before. So she really likes to knit the same pattern several times, like use a basic pattern as a template for different color and yarn combinations. And she wanted to open that up to other people to share and talk about what they do. So I don't know if, well, actually, these mittens that I'm making for my son, I made that pattern ages ago. I mean, like more than 10 years ago, I think. So this would count for that. Any simple socks I do would probably count for that. This gnome that I'm working on, I've made this gnome pattern before. So if I think of it and use the hashtag and stuff, I'll enter that make along as well. But the thing that I like about these knit alongs, make alongs, whatever, is that they're very laid back. They don't have a lot of rules. I don't like when there's a lot of rules and constrictions. Basically it's, and it's a nice long period of about 3 months in which you have to start and end something. And it's more about the joy of participating in something with a lot of other people, seeing what everybody else is doing, feeling like you're a part of it. It's more about that than like trying to get prizes or points or gain favor with somebody. Because that whole sort of popularity contest aspect of knitting and making is not my jam. That is something I should have mentioned in my very long intro about myself, is that I do this because I knit all the time. I like to talk about it. I like to share about it. I like to be on the internet with other knitters, but it is not a goal of mine to be an influencer. I will never have a knitting related business. This is just something I do for fun. So anyway, whew. Okay. I was going to share a sewing project, but I have been talking for so long that I think I'm going to save that for next time. So that you'll have to look forward to. Thank you for joining me. I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.